Thank you. It's a great privilege to speak at the SPUC conferences, not least because I don't have anything to do and no organisation. So it's great, and it's been a really blessed conference, hasn't it, this weekend? We've heard loads, and it's given us new insight into things. It's been great. And this is the third SPUC conference that I've spoken to in a year, actually, believe it or not. So my apologies at the beginning to anybody who has been at any other of my talks where some of this is repetition. I've tried to kind of vary it a little bit just for that reason. Okay, so I've chosen the title, Restoring the Church, Renewing Society. Some of you might think that's rather a pretentious title, and right at the beginning I want to say that I haven't got all the answers. In fact, it's a massive topic when I came to prepare it. But if 50 years, nearly 50 years of abortion have taught us anything, it's that the issue is not just out there, it's in here. You know, abortion has affected us all in some way. And for many of us, abortion has affected our families. And I can say that for my family. You know, abortion has affected my family. And it may be there are others in this room that abortion has affected in some way, and they're hurt by abortion. Certainly within our churches, abortion has affected our churches, and we might never know in what ways that has happened. But you can guarantee that in any congregation, there will be people there that have been affected by abortion. And that maybe accounts for some of the resistance that we find when we try to spread our message. And we'll talk about that a little later on. And as well as that, as well as it actually affecting us, with 1/10 of the population missing, it's affecting us in the sense that there are people that could have been here that are not here. There are people that could have been in our churches that are not in our churches. And in society that are not in society. So it's affected us in so many ways, hasn't it? And I've not only not got all the answers, I've not even got the experience that some of you lot have got. I'd want to congratulate SPUC on 50 years. It's an amazing thing that you were in it right from the beginning. And I came into pro-life issues in 1980 when I went to listen to a presentation called Whatever Happened to the Human Race. That's the next slide, yeah. And some of you may have heard of Francis Schaeffer. He was a great guy for waking the evangelical church up. And I've got to say, we were really very much asleep until he came on the scene. And there was a wave of evangelical involvement in abortion through that guy's witness and testimony. And I had come through, I'd been a Christian since I was 13, I was in my 20s when I went to hear it, and I believed abortion was wrong, but like the exceptions, you know, maybe rape, disability, but not even thought what that meant, you know. You're in a cocoon, aren't you, in society, and it's like you're somehow brainwashed. And this guy opened my eyes to what the reality was, that actually abortion was wrong right from the beginning. The moment of conception, the moment of fertilisation, there was a new life, and that life needed protection. And I was horrified that I thought any different. It's like, it's as obvious, you know, it's like seeing the light, isn't it? You go from one thing to another and you think, wow. You know, it's like another conversion experience. This is for real. And I know some of you might have been brought up in families like that, but I wasn't. So it was a great privilege, and I owe a lot to them. And to Professor Zachary, who was a disabled guy, but he'd written a pamphlet called The Humanity of the Fetus. And that I thought was brilliant. It really kind of impacted me a lot. So I got involved in the 80s. For 7 years was part of the Life movement, because at the time there were no evangelical kind of movements on the go. So for 7 years was caring officer for Life. My husband was education officer. And then in the late 80s, I mean, he was speaking in churches and we were trying to get the message across. In the late 80s, he began to stand at the abortion clinics, and he was like a bit of a forerunner of the 40 Days for Life. And he stood there, he was a school teacher, so he could stand in the school holidays. He stood there from 7 till 9 every morning, all through the school holidays. And he gave out leaflets, and in those days, because we knew Life weren't very happy with that kind of stuff, we'd created a leaflet that had our number on it, our home number. So if there were any people that wanted help, they could phone our house. And he said they could talk to you. So I was on the caring side, he was kind of out there, really. And in a way, it was quite prophetic ministry at that point. And it was paving the way, I think, for a lot of what's happening today. And there was one morning where there was a lovely Catholic lady standing outside the clinic praying, not even giving leaflets out. And the clinic had called the police, and the police came out and said that if she didn't move, she would be arrested. So she said, but I'm only praying. I'm not even talking to the girls, I'm not engaging. And she refused to move. And so they came to arrest her, and Jim stood next to her because he wouldn't see her arrested on her own. And that case went to the High Court. And there is a case now that is Fidler versus the Crown, I think. And I think it won, that particular one. That was just for space to stand and pray outside the clinic. So you can see in those 80s it was quite a big deal. So through the late 80s we saw the insides of the courts quite a lot, because he was also involved with James Morrow from Braemar, did the old rescue, that kind of thing. So we were in and out of the courts incredibly. And then in 1989, he came home one day from the clinic with his glasses broken and beaten up. And it seemed like that particular year, every single attack was the same, and it was like orchestrated, you know, a real enemy attack. Different people saying the same things to him, you silly little man, you know. He wasn't little, but there we go. And also really parallel to that was this great pressure, really, from other people to start an evangelical Christian pro-life movement where prayer was more up front, and it was more to do with praying. You know, we obviously prayed privately, but there's that sense that it needed corporate prayer. And in a way, Image was born out of that. So in 1990, Image was formed, and obviously called Image because we believe every person is made in the image of God from conception to natural death. And our first kind of thing that happened was that we had prayer and fasting rotas. So immediately around Manchester, there were 40 people who prayed and fasted on one day a month, and it was coordinated about the local supply of abortion. And they'd do it on a weekly basis or a monthly basis or whatever they wanted to. But there was a covering of that. And within that first 6 months, we saw 2 babies saved in quite dramatic ways at the clinic. It was like there was a turning of the tide. And that's why I think 40 Days for Life is good, because it puts prayer at the centre of that witness, you know, and people do turn back and turn round. And we had the privilege that year of going to the christening of a baby that was saved at the clinic in a Catholic church. It was a Catholic lady that had gone, well, girl, 16, had gone to abort her child because her father wasn't supportive, and she landed up back at our house at breakfast time when I was feeding the kids. And Jim took over the feeding, and I went in the front room to talk to her, and she changed her mind and then invited us. We supported her with clothes and equipment. She invited us to the christening of the baby, which was amazing. So it quite a dramatic start. I've got to say we still don't do the clinic work because that was kind of Jim's thing, and Jim isn't here any longer. And 40 Days for Life have arisen, I think, to take a very valuable place. And my kind of bent is the caring work. So we're very much into the caring work as Image, but recognise the value of all aspects of pro-life work, really, taking the part. And it feels right that that is kind of slightly separate, because we now see women that may have been to the clinic and been past the pro-life witness and turned around, coming to our centre, and they come to us as separate. And that feels right. You know, that's a good thing to be doing. So we started Image in 1990. The helpline, pregnancy helpline, started mid-90s. And I think at the most, we've seen 400 a year in some way. We've had contact with 400 a year at our best. We kind of dipped over the last couple of years because of some negative publicity, but I'll talk about that in a bit. And people can contact us by text, by email, or by phone. And they largely come through the internet. And because we're called Pregnancy Helpline, people who are in a crisis pregnancy and are looking for help, looking for support to make that decision, they find us quite quickly. And we're based in Manchester, but have links with other centres across the country. So that's how we started. 49 years on, the Evangelical Church, and having talked to some of you over the dinner table, the Catholic Church still is in a mess. We're still broken on this issue of abortion, and still it's not the upfront issue that we want it to be in our churches, is it? Which is why the title of the talk. So I've got a few reflections, really, that I want to bring to you today. And the first one is that we need to help the church to rethink the values. And rethinking the values can come in all sorts of ways. We can give talks, and it may be that you don't feel that you can give a talk in your church, but you can invite someone from SPUC to give a talk. You can invite someone in to do that, so we can try and promote it from the front. We can try and promote the values through schools work and what place to do it to get our young people on board. And I know you've got an education work in the pack. You're asking for people to help that actually does that. But I'm going to just give a quick plug here to Challenge Team UK, which would run parallel to your education programmes. And this is a group of 4 young people who go into schools talking about saving sex for marriage. I think this year there might be 3. And they are young people themselves, so they're between the ages of 20 and 29. And they are modelling saving sex for marriage. And it's so important that we do some preventative work as well as catching people the other side. So this would go very well running parallel to your education programmes, and they're looking for school bookings. I've got to say, because of the way that sex education is going, the bookings have dipped over the last few years, and I know that some people in SPUC are coordinators for their area for this team. So if anybody else wants to do that work, do come and see me afterwards and take a leaflet. But the tour starts, the training in November, and the tour starts in November. And it runs right through the year and right across the country. And in 10 years, they've reached 100,000 young people. So it's a great thing to promote and be involved with. And then not only schools work, but our general talking to people on a day-to-day level, we need to be promoting and trying to get this into conversation and be winning with it as well. No one likes to be bashed over the head with all this. So it's about finding winning ways to engage people in it. And I know that the book Why Pro-Life has been an amazing resource. So literature is a really good way of getting things out. Having things at the back of church, maybe giving books out free. There's plenty of Why Pro-Life on the Evangelical SPUC stall. And I've just been amazed because we're now involved with Spain and a whole new Spanish group that's taken up called CIFRA, which is, Mary was mentioning CIFRA yesterday, one of the midwives in Exodus who saved the babies' lives. And that has started because one woman in Spain read Why Pro-Life and decided she had to do something about it. So then came across and did our training, and we've now got involved with them, and they've set up a whole new pro-life group in Spain called Cifra, that's reaching out to women. So who knows what one book can do in the hands of someone, or one leaflet. So always be prepared to give out and help people to rethink the values. And what's troubled me sometimes is that what we've seen in the pregnancy work is people who have those values actually, when the crisis hits, having an abortion or thinking of an abortion. And that's troubled me, you know, that you can kind of have all those values, but when it comes to you and something happens. And the thing I just want to put out there for us to think about is, how do we deal with shame in our churches? You know, shame is the big issue that drives people to abortion. If you've done something wrong, if you've conceived outside marriage, then shame for a Christian would say, I've got to have an abortion. No one can know this. So how do we make our churches places of welcome for people who have stepped out of line on this issue? Maybe got an unplanned pregnancy. We need to kind of marry those two things. We need to keep our strong values, but somehow make our churches warm for people that have sinned. Jesus was friend of sinners, wasn't he? And, you know, Mary would have known some of that shame because she was pregnant before she got married, you know, officially to Joseph. So you kind of feel we've got to kind of be looking at both things and balancing them out in our churches and making them places of hope and healing and restoration. So I'm just throwing that out there. And I would say always carry with you support for people who have got personal problems. Be the person that's not only pushing the values, but giving out the support, the numbers. You know, we've got Arch, we've got, what they called? Good Counsel Network, Image. You know, be people that are actually helping people to find help in those crises as well. Okay, and just to tell you what Image is doing to help to rethink the values in the church, we're providing training for people in churches who want to help pregnant women with those decisions. So we run a 60-hour course that's recognised by Open Awards at levels 2 and 3 and the Association of Christian Counsellors. It's run on 5 Saturdays over 5 months, and it equips people to talk to people who have crisis pregnancies. And it means that if any groups want to then run a centre or provide their own help for people, they're able to do that with support. And it's that marrying of truth and grace, you know, keeping those two in balance. And there's a famous saying that was actually quoted in the post-abortion seminar, that no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. So again, it's that marrying of those things. We've got to be people that hold fast to what we believe, promote what we believe, but do it with a heart of love and compassion for people around. And I'm sure you're already doing that. But with the resources to help people as well. And the next slide, please. Just to say that over the last 18 months, we've been running a trainers course. So we've been training people up to deliver our training course. And the result of that is that this year, we've got image courses running in West Midlands, North Yorkshire, Manchester, Swindon, Chelmsford and London, which is an amazing expansion really in that time. So we're really pleased about that. And there's a course in planning in Spain and some other courses in planning as well. So that's the first point. Second point is we need to help the church. Next slide. Sorry. Oh, I think, all right, okay, don't show it yet then. So we don't only need to help the church to rethink the values. Oh yeah, I'm just going to show you a clip of someone who's been helped by some of these pregnancy centres. Well, actually our pregnancy centre. So you just see a clip. What? Yes, no?
I became aware of Images Service through ringing a helpline when I first became pregnant. Because of the state I was in at the time, I can't remember which helpline I rang, but Image was the first one they referred me to. My situation was that I was having an unplanned pregnancy with a lot of obstacles in the way, and I needed support to continue the pregnancy. And really get rid of a lot of the stress that I was carrying and continue the pregnancy against all odds. Image helped me by providing me with a lot of valuable support, emotional support. It gave me the strength to see the pregnancy through and resolve issues I was having at the time. It was quite regular, the support I received, and it always seemed to come at a time when I most needed it. It got me through the pregnancy, really. I would have had a very difficult time had I not found Image, and probably wouldn't be doing so well as I am now.
That's Angela. Amazing story. Okay, so that's rethinking the values. Second point is restoring the damage. We need to help the church to restore the damage that's been done by abortion. And there's a lot of it. And, sorry, I just worked the slide. Can't do it again. I'll carry on. I'm just going to quote a passage from Isaiah 61, which has been quite a motivator for me. The Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is upon me, for the Lord has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to comfort the brokenhearted and to proclaim that captives will be released and prisoners will be freed. We know that's Jesus' mandate, don't we, for his ministry. But it's also our mandate for our ministry too. And part of our ministry is to bring good news to the poor, to comfort the brokenhearted. And actually, people who have had an abortion are brokenhearted because they've not lost a clump of cells, they've lost a baby. And to proclaim that captives will be released and prisoners will be freed. And we'll see later on how so many that have had abortions feel trapped. They feel they can't speak about what's happened to them. What's happened to them has often been a secret. And it's to bring release and freedom. And it goes on to say, to all who mourn in Israel, that's God's people, he will give a crown of beauty for ashes, a joyous blessing instead of mourning, festive praise instead of despair. In their righteousness there will be like great oaks that the Lord has planted for his own glory. So there's a promise of restoration for people in our churches who have been broken by abortion and hurt by abortion. So the question is, how do we go about doing that? And I suppose what I want to do today is introduce a new resource that's just come on the market. And it's aimed at churches. It's for churches. So if you could put the next slide up, please. It's a programme written by someone called Jonathan Jeffs. He goes to Holy Trinity Brompton, that produced the Alpha course. And he's produced an Alpha-style post-abortion programme for groups of people in churches that have been affected by abortion, which is an amazing thing. And it's in the process of obtaining nihil obstat at the Bishop's office, and is an excellent response to the Year of Mercy that Pope Francis has declared. This is all new speak for me. But it's possible to sign up to actually get the programme and be instrumental in the delivery of it, either in the church or in a group of churches. And obviously it has to be delivered in a confidential way. But even if you people here feel it's not for you to deliver it, you may know of people in your churches who are gifted in people work and are pro-life, who are able to deliver this course. So I'd like to encourage you to have a look at it. There's a copy of the manual on the desk. It's a 9-week programme. And I've got the promotional video here today that I'm going to show you. And these are church people that have taken part in this course. He's been running it for 20 years in Holy Trinity Brompton with good effect. So if we can get the next one up. Sorry, we're having some problems with the embedded DVDs. So.
I was 20 when I had an abortion, and I was still living with my mom and my younger brother, and it was a situation where I saw no other way out.
When I was 15 years old, I got pregnant and ended up having an abortion. It changed my whole life, and I felt so much shame and grief. The years after that were spent trying to bury the pain I was carrying. I learnt to live with the pain. I guess it became so familiar to me that I couldn't remember life without it. Just the sadness I felt for what I'd done was overwhelming, and sometimes it was so much that I'd weep because I'd never be able to change what had happened.
I couldn't allow myself to grieve, to go through grief, because I didn't feel I deserved it. And for many years I kept it in a secret. I buried it deep inside, and emotional pain was still there, and it was growing, and it manifested itself even in physical illness eventually.
The Restore and Rebuild course has been running for over 20 years, and it's helped hundreds of women in that time. It was started originally at Holy Trinity Brompton Church in London, but now runs across other centres in the UK. People react very differently to having an abortion. Some women really struggle with the long-term emotional impact of what's happened. We aim to provide a really safe place where people can come and work through their emotions and receive God's healing.
I heard about the course when a woman stood up at the front of church and talked about a post-abortion healing course, and I just knew deep down that I needed to do the course.
Coming on Restore and Rebuild course was one of the best decisions I made. When I got there, I discovered that a lot of women go through very similar experiences after abortion.
When the day arrived to start the course, I was so nervous. I was literally shaking when I knocked on the door, but I was warmly welcomed by the leader and introduced to other guests, and this helped me relax a bit, and it also helped me realise that I wasn't the only one. I was really worried about being seen on the course, but the leaders took confidentiality really seriously, which was a relief. The course for me was like a journey. We looked at anger and grief, and responsibility, and forgiveness. I never realised how much pain I was carrying inside me.
I have come away recovered, healed.
I'm truly grateful that my church had the courage to run this course. It gave me a lifeline, a way back to God, and a way to live without brokenness anymore. I would encourage any woman who's had a similar experience to go on the course, and to remember God always has loved you and always will love you, no matter what.
For any woman thinking about doing a course, or for anybody who has gone through similar experiences, I would strongly recommend it is possible to come out of this pain, to be restored, to be healed. And it's not only possible, it's God's desire to see us healed.
That's Restore and Rebuild. And that comes, really, the title of it comes from the next verse in Isaiah 61 that says about the people of Israel, the believers that are restored. They will rebuild the ancient ruins, repairing cities destroyed long ago. They will revive them, though they have been deserted for many generations. And there's a sense in which who knows what impact that could have to release our church of the people who are hurting from abortion, who dare never mention it, and to get them to experience restoration and healing. There's an army there, isn't there, that could be used in the future. Okay, I'm aware that I've got less than 10 minutes left, so I'm going to race through some of my other points, if that's all right. So we've got that we need to get the church to rethink their position and to restore the damage. And now we need to reassess our position as we interface with the world, I think. And I think of the pro-life movement, I suppose, and the work that we do, particularly those of us that are in the caring work, as really being a witness against the intolerance of strong opinions. You know, we live in a society where British values mean that to have a strong opinion, you've got to be prejudiced, you've got to be intolerant. And actually, we work our caring work, our strong values define our boundaries, and within those boundaries, we don't refer for abortion, we don't refer for contraception, those kind of strong boundaries, believe that sex is within marriage. Within those strong boundaries, we can show a heart of love and compassion that's massive for those whose beliefs and values are different from ours. There's a security around our values that gives us that heart for people that are different. And I think in our generation, that's something that the world doesn't understand, actually. It has no comprehension of how to have a strong opinion and compassion. And I think the Christian church can show that. We can show it's possible to do both, and defy by our being what the world would say. The second point, these are just my own thoughts on reassessing my position, really. With the advent of 4D imaging in prenatal development, we've had major breakthroughs in this generation, really. And we can major on abortion being unthinkable as well as illegal. And I've got to say that if it was illegal, it would become unthinkable for a lot of people. We see a lot of people, and it's torturous to see people decide to have an abortion just because it's there. You know, if it was not there, they wouldn't be able to make that decision. So we need to work at both, don't we? Making it illegal and unthinkable in our society. And sadly, the media have been hijacked by the pro-abortion lobby, and we have a problem on our hands. But let's pray for a turning of the tide on that one. And then the third point that I've been doing a lot of thinking about, because I've been writing a new post-abortion manual. This is how I came to meet Jonathan Jeffs, who did Restore and Rebuild, because we were both on a similar project, but he was writing for the church, and I was writing for use in the world, I suppose, really, as well as use in the church. I've been in pro-life work for 30 odd years, and had never come across abortion being described as disenfranchised grief. I was really glad to hear Claire describe it in that way in the post-abortion seminar. But for me, that's really significant. So if you put the next slide on, disenfranchised grief means a grief that is not recognised by society, which isolates the woman, and she's unable to grieve. And it's disenfranchised because the relationship's not recognised. And we know in our society a person is only a mother if she wants the baby. If she doesn't want the baby, mother doesn't come into it. It's a clump of cells that she can get rid of. The loss is not acknowledged, and the very fact that we've got the 1967 Abortion Act and all the amendments on it mean that it's legal. So surely what's legal isn't going to hurt you. You know, it can't be something really serious. So there's no loss acknowledged in that. And the griever is excluded. And for the woman, she feels she's made that choice. How can she grieve? I go into prison every week in Manchester and work with people who have child loss issues. And I had a woman who had had an abortion at 20 weeks, and she gingerly walked in and said, I shouldn't be here. I don't deserve to get help. I shouldn't really be seeking help because I made this choice, you know. And it's like the woman is disenfranchised. She's like out of it, feels she cannot grieve. And I think that's the reason why so many people don't come for help about abortion until years later, and when something triggers it, because they felt they haven't had permission to grieve. And I actually feel it's quite a useful tool in the outside world to use, this disenfranchised grief, because as pro-abortionists talk about there's no such thing as post-abortion stress, there's no such thing, this is only a clump of cells, they are disenfranchising the women that are hurting by that language. And so I feel this is a powerful tool for us to be able to use this terminology about post-abortion work, disenfranchised grief. And the next slide, please. Sorry, I will be quick. So the programmes we use are to unpick the wall that's been built around the client and to allow them to walk out into the world again. So we run with a strap line. Small steps to change the way you're thinking can make a big difference to the way you're feeling. And just the next slide quickly runs through the step-by-step support programme that I'm writing that should be hopefully in print by November. And I'm not going to go through that, but those of you that are into this work can see what kind of resource it's going to be. So, fourth point, quickly, is that we do this work with realism. We do this work with a realism about ourselves. We're weak in this work. We're not people that have got it all together. We're not people without our own trials. And I can say that personally. Since I've been working in pro-life work, the trials have been thick and fast. I've had cancer twice. Once when I was in my 40s, 45, and my youngest were only 3 and 5. And again when I was 58. My husband died 10 years ago, prostate cancer. I've got 7 children, and I've had masses of joys, but masses of issues too. So it's thick and fast. While we are working on the front line, the enemy is out to get us. And we have to be aware of that. We come as weak people, but we have a God that's stronger than any enemy. And be realistic about the battle. We're fighting an enemy that's got more resources, got the media, is far stronger than we are, can influence public opinion so much easier than we can ever influence it. And I was glad that Mary talks about David and Goliath, because that was the picture that immediately came to mind. And we've already been under attack from the media. We saw it in the late 80s about the work at the clinic and the negative press that still lives on in the churches about work outside the clinic. You know, people will say, "Oh, you don't do that kind of thing, do you?" Because it was dubbed that people shouted murderers when no one had ever heard anybody say that outside a clinic. And we've had negative press about the pregnancy work from Brooke Advisory and Education for Choice have attacked us just over the last couple of years and put it out. There was an article in the Telegraph that was very negative. So we know we've got an enemy and a strong enemy. And we're not ignorant of those things. But if you put the next slide on. These are people that in their day, Martin Luther King he was an inciter of hatred and violence, an extremist. Josephine Butler, who worked against prostitution, that she was an irresponsible rabble-rouser, fouler of the minds of children. And it was the same for Wilberforce, Wesley, Booth, Shaftesbury. These were all honoured posthumously, really, later on. And really, we can't expect to be honoured in this life in many ways. It's not an easy journey. So next slide. But what I would say is that we need to reach high. I don't know about you, but I've been really inspired by the Paralympic Games, that no matter what obstacles are in front of people, we can reach high. You know, we have a big God and we can do it. And it's just been amazing to watch these incredible stories and people who have dared to believe. And we've got to dare to believe that despite our emotional difficulties, our physical problems, our circumstances, God can use people like us, small, weak, insignificant people, to change society. And the next slide. Just to say that for me, that means digging deep, and for me, prayer has become a key to this whole work. And I just want to do a plug for the National Day of Prayer. We've got some fact sheets if anybody wants some prayer pointers for the Day of Prayer on the 27th of October this year. And we as an organisation have networked with the Manchester House of Prayer, who have just had a week of prayer for us and the pro-life issues for the nation, which has been amazing. And the last one. Is it the last one? Not quite. I just want to say with this, we're each doing our own bits, but actually we're a team. You know, I might be working in image, others might be working in other things, you're working in SPUC, but we are one team together. You know, we're all on the same side, and we've got to pull together, we've got to cheer one another on, we've got to help one another in it. But there is a role for us all. Each of these have an individual event that they have to work on. And for some of you, it won't even be doing, it will be being. As for many of us, it is being as well. And I just want to say at the last SPUC conference, not the last one, the one before, Evangelical SPUC last year, I didn't meet her, she wrote to me afterwards, a lady, who said, my passion for this issue perhaps stems from the fact that I myself am a product of a failed backstreet abortion. Though I was extremely ill at birth and required extended hospitalisation, God worked a miracle, which led to the later miracle of my leading my mother to faith in Jesus Christ 2 years before her death. What an amazing testimony. You know, some of us are just a testimony, you know, to God's grace in this and his work, just being. And for others, we have particular tasks that God's called us to, that we feel we might be doing very much alone and on our own, but we are part of a team, and we need to encourage one another on. Last slide. So, I know I've raced through this, but just to recap, let's help the church to rethink the values. Let's help the church to restore the damage. Let's reassess where we interface with society. Let's approach our task with realism, and let's reach high. Because who knows whether in God's mercy you or I might be carrying the stone that is the one that starts to bring the giant of abortion tumbling in this country.